Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Profiles in Risk. We have Guns N' Roses' November Rain outside here in New England. I don't know what it's like in Staten Island. We'll ask our guest in a second, but I'm so pleased to introduce my guest for this episode, Michael Porpora. Michael is the Vice President of RPM Insurance Agency and the President of Porpora Associates from Staten Island, New York. Michael, welcome.
Thank you, Nicholas. I'm happy to be here, and thank you for having me.
Is it raining there?
No, it's a nice fall day, a little overcast, but also a little bit warm. So we're suffering with those spikes in temperature where it goes from 40 or 50 to 70, and the air conditioning systems can't keep up. So we don't know, we don't know if we're in the summer or in the winter when it comes to our climate control. So it's a tad warm in my office today, but otherwise good.
Darn it. It is cold and rainy here. It's just like true November rain, like the
when you say New England, that's the picture that gets painted in my mind.
Yeah, I love fall in New England. It's beautiful. It's actually orange outside. Like especially when the sun shines, it's just orange. I love that. But you get this rain. It gets really cold outside, and then snows right around the corner, so it gets miserable around here. So. Didn't want to talk about the weather. It's a good intro, but I'm pleased to have this conversation with you because we have, as you know, in our pre-discussion, I was describing how on Insurance Nerd Slack channel, we get a lot of folks that ask questions about how do I start as an agent? How do I get started on the distribution side? And you're here because we're going to focus a lot of attention on developing a niche business, a specialty, and really focusing and building a book and a career around that. So before we get started with those specific questions, I wanted to give you a couple minutes as for an elevator pitch. Who is Michael Porpora and what is RPM Insurance Agency?
So I'm a 30-year veteran of the business. I came into it as the son of a boss, so I'm an SOB. My father had a small, local insurance agency, just a community-based insurance agency, which was really fitting for where we are in Staten Island because it's a tight-knit community borough, in the 5 boroughs of New York City. So I started, in that, and if my father was a dentist, I would have been a dentist. So I didn't grow up wanting to be an insurance professional. I just grew up wanting to work with my dad. And if he was a dentist, I'd be talking to somebody about the latest, polishing and drilling techniques, and not you. Exactly. So, but here we are. It's been an amazing career. It's a really interesting journey that I've had. So I started, in the business then, and I learned every facet of it. I started typing ID cards. Now, for the new guys or ladies who are wondering, what do you mean typing? Like we actually had typewriters.
What's a typewriter?
What's a typewriter? And we would type ID cards and filing. And what do you mean filing? Well, we had paper files. And so I literally grew up being proficient in every aspect of the business. And that's, given me a well-rounded base, not only when I'm talking to clients, or company people, but also in dealing with business issues or dealing with staff members, because I understand what they're dealing with. I've done literally everything in the business, and when I owned an agency, so I was with my father for 7 or 8 years until '93 when he retired, and with 2 partners, we bought the business. Rob Solberg and John Campbell. John's no longer with us. He's passed away. But Rob is still in the business. He's in Manhattan. And we bought this business and we grew it a little bit. And then Campbell wanted to retire. So that gave us an option at that time for Rob to exit and Campbell to exit. And I continued with Porpora Associates. That was the name of the company. And I ran that until 2015. When I partnered with RPM, which is a whole other really interesting story. So I don't know if my contact info will wind up somewhere, but when you see the name RPM Insurance Agency and you look at my business card, you think, well, local insurance agency in the community of Staten Island. And if we were to, write a mission statement for our company, I mean, that's really what we are. We're a community-based insurance agency in Staten Island. We're the oldest insurance agency in Staten Island. Our history goes back to the 1800s. We're the longest standing member of the Chamber of Commerce, things like that. So our function and our focus here is to serve the community in Staten Island, the citizens of Staten Island. But when you look a little deeper at my business card, you're going to notice the name Acrisure. And for those who are paying attention to what's going on in the industry right now, Acrisure is, by last count, around the 9th largest independent insurance agency in the country. So we've got a revenue stream of about $1.5 billion. I'm not going to spend too much time talking about those kind of things with the company, but one of the interesting things about it is that where our competitors kind of, when you partner with a Brown and Brown or Marsh Mac or Jardine, people like that, they kind of strip everything away. They strip you of yourself, and you absorb the corporate mantra. Ours is the least disruption, the better. So we don't lead with Acrisure. We lead with RPM Insurance Agency, and our strength is community-based insurance agency. But we've got agency partners all across the country who have specific niches in various industries. So we write, $1 gazillion worth of trucking insurance, as an example. We've got a really, really deep penetration in California for work comp, which is a nightmare state in and of itself. But we've got people out there who are experts at it. And the list just goes on and on and on. We've got people in Florida who do flood stuff, which, I'll have to introduce you to those guys, down there. They do it both on the brokerage, but also on the consulting side. So, interesting stuff. So we do all of these really neat and interesting things as a large entity, but we have the touch and the feel in our office, at least, of a local community insurance agency. And it's kind of interesting. You mentioned the Porpora Associates. So I've really got two titles. When you look at my employment contract, I'm the president of Porpora Associates Agency Operations. Again, the least disruption, the better. We don't do press announcements. We don't, we keep everything low key when we acquire and partner with new firms. But we immediately knew my partners at the local level. I'm a shareholder in the larger company, but then I've got partners at the local level, here in the office. And we immediately realized when I did this in 2015 that it made more sense to tuck the business in, get all of the clients acclimated to the new service center, because I came from a very small office. Now I've got, a great support staff. My clients benefit from that. And let's fly the RPM flag. That's really what we want to do. Let's leverage that brand because it's so prominent on Staten Island. So we did a small little press announcement, and that's when I learned I was vice president of RPM Insurance Agency. Like, I had no idea. So it's really neat. So I've got like two titles, for whatever that's worth. I'm gonna share something now that we really haven't announced, but I'm probably gonna have a third title in the very near future. So groundbreaking news. Nobody really knows about this yet. We acquired and I'm lowering the tone of my voice because nobody outside knows. We acquired a professional liability insurance agency in Woodbridge by the name of Marquis. Now, we're going to, at some point, I think we're probably going to talk about my niche. My niche is professional liability coverage. I'm an insurance geek. I like that stuff. So there's, we're kind of in the end stages now of figuring out how to transition and get me, over there helping grow that particular book. So I have no idea what my title will be, but at some point in the future, we're going to be flying the Marquis professional risk flag, and I'm going to be focusing on architects, engineers, franchise business, things like that. So there you go. Hot off the presses.
It's a first. It's finally happened. Profiles in risk and insurance nerds. We are the trusted source for breaking news in the insurance industry. So I have a feeling by the time this comes out, it will already be news in one form or another. But thank you for sharing that. So the gist of this, and we both have hinted at it, is niche businesses, niche business, niche markets. And it's something that I tell new agents or new brokers that come in that, hey, listen, you can sell auto and homeowners to your friends and family. You might even be able to place, some small business stuff for your friend's dad who owns a pizza shop. That's going to get hard after a while. And those businesses have a lot of competition. I always stress, try to find an area where you can develop some sort of passion about it, but also where it's potentially underserved in the market. And so, in your opinion, in terms of like how you've gotten to this point and where you're going into the future with your business, how important is finding a niche?
I think it's critical. It's really difficult to be all things to all people. You can't do it well. You can't. I don't think that you can make money doing it. And we're doing this obviously, because the bills need to be paid. I mean, my kids need sneakers. Like, we've got to pay the bills here. So for me, the concept of getting a process in place and being able to do, kind of the same thing over and over and over. There comes with that repetitive motion. For lack of a better term, expertise. That's not really the right term. But when you can do that and create that process, it allows you to focus on learning the things that need to be done and not being distracted by all of the other things that are going to pull you away from being successful at that one thing. I've spent the vast majority of my professional career as a general practice. And when you look at my book of business now, it's all over the place. I do have, a heavy personal lines book. I do have a heavy small business book, BOP-based work comp, retail stores, some construction stuff, things like that. But in the last couple of years, since I came to Acrisure and to RPM, it kind of allowed me to figure out what I want to do when I grow up. And it only took 30 years. I mean, I'm 51 years old, and I finally realized, like, okay, this is when the fun happens. And I kind of found those two niches that I wanted to focus on, and they're really two very unique and different niches. But to your question, how important is it? I think it's critical. And I think I think there are so many of them out there that for the young producer, finding the thing that they're passionate about, or the thing that matches their ethics and their morals and their personalities. So I'll give you an example. I went through a visioning process about a year and a half ago. I read this really great book called Traction. And what it did for me was I've always had these business ideas kind of flying around my atmosphere in my head like airplanes, and I could never land them. So I read this book, and it let me land these airplanes. So part of the process of what I did was I wrote a mission statement. Like, I have an individual mission statement. I wrote my core values. I always knew I had them, but once I put them on paper, and once I put my mission statement on paper, it kind of solidified and validated what I've been experiencing, in the first 20 or 30 years of my career in not being fulfilled. So, I'm a geek. I'm a nerd. I like to read contracts. I sell by value. I don't sell price. I could care less what it costs. I mean, price is obviously a consideration, but I lead with value. I lead with expertise. My unique ability is that I actually read these stupid insurance policies and I understand them. So, my thought process is, how can I educate the client? And all of those things came, to fruition when I went through this process. So in doing that, I was able to identify the niche that I wanted to focus on and get away from all of the other things. And that was the professional liability coverage, predominantly architects and engineers. They're kind of introverted as well, and I can be a little bit of both. People who see me might not realize, because I tend to have a pretty loud and big personality, but I'm kind of introverted in a certain way.
I'm the same way. I'm same exact way. Yep.
Yeah. So, you know, doing business with like-minded people for me was very critical. I would come home at the end of the day and I couldn't, you know, I don't want to use the word wash the stink off my hands, but you know, like after a hard day's work and you just feel beat down and kind of, and you're worn out and, you know, and I couldn't figure out why I felt that way. Like, why wasn't I fulfilled? Why wasn't I happy? I made money. I mean, you know, the first 30 years of my career provided wonderful things for my family, but there wasn't that fulfillment. And I didn't really start seeing that until the last year or two, you know, as this has kind of evolved and developed. And, you know, I'm looking forward to the next 10 to 15 years of my career as, like, this is when the fun happens. This is really, really cool, really special stuff going on. So yeah, finding a niche, whatever it is, I go off on tangents and segues. To your, finding something you're passionate about and something where you're aligned with your client, I think is critical. So there are industries, you know, every sort of industry out there. I'm going to pick on taxi drivers just, you know, because it's the first thing that pops into my mind. The last person I want to do business with from a business standpoint is a taxi driver. I don't know anything about the space. It doesn't excite me. Car insurance is boring as get out. Like, there's nothing there that draws me to it. So for me to focus on taxi drivers as a niche, in my view, would be a colossal waste of time. So I would advise a younger producer coming into it, you know, what are your hobbies? What are your skill sets? You know, if you don't like to read insurance policies, you probably don't want to have to, you don't want to be in an area where having a high level of technical expertise is critical. You may, you know, delegate that back to support staff and just go out and find new relationships. So leverage your strengths.
Yeah,
and that comes
I'm gonna tack on to that because I think that's like extremely important because I think, you know, for an agent that's starting out, they have to realize that it's going to be like a couple years before they start seeing the fruits of their labor, right? So I'm always trying to emphasize you need like adrenaline to keep yourself going because there are going to be so many opportunities for you to want to quit. If you leverage your strength, or as you said, you focus on things like your hobbies or something that you have an emotional connection to that can potentially provide a lift for you in those periods where you're not being very successful, that's a plus. And I think that gets part to the niche part is sort of you're going to need that adrenaline, that ammunition, that whatever, that lift that kind of keep you going when you're not really successful yet.
Yeah, definitely. You know, customers want value, and when you can differentiate yourself from somebody else, that's huge. That's a huge advantage. And you know, it's really, I mean, you could do it selling auto and home. I mean, there are plenty of producers that make a great living focused on personalized markets. I mean, you're doing things like that. You know, doing flood insurance would drive me absolutely crazy. Pre-firm, post-firm, like, forget it. But the nerd in me also, it's kind of interesting. If I were to spend the time to actually learn that vernacular and learn all of those rules, I mean, it could be kind of neat. So
well, let me ask you a question about your niche business. How often when you are, so I'm assuming a lot of your prospects you're getting because of your professional liability expertise. Am I right?
Yes. Well, I'm holding myself out in the marketing to those particular areas.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm still kind of, you know, in a general practice, and that's where this new thing is going to kind of, I think, pull me a little bit away from that. But yeah, I'm leading with, one of the things that I've done is I've learned what the client's pain points are and hold myself out in the ability to help them. So when it comes to architects, in particular, they are absolutely allergic to the insurance renewal process. They are like vampires in sunlight when it comes to getting insurance. This is about the most unpleasant thing that they want to do. They just don't like it. So We start the process early. And, one of the simple things that I do when I send out a renewal app or a new business, and particularly a renewal app, is I'll attach last year's app. Now, they've got it somewhere in their office, but if I give them last year's app and this year's renewal app in the same email, they can see how quickly they can do it, when I walk them through it. We provide, as silly as this sounds, when you look at a professional liability app, one of the things the architects have to do is drill into their scope of services and percentages and things like that, but they don't understand some of the questions. So I've given them a cheat sheet. This is what that question means, so they can reference and do it. I'll do it over the phone with them. Then I run through, when we actually get to time to present the quote, I'm very analytical, so I've broken the quote down into the terms and conditions of the policy. The price is the last thing we talk about. I educate the client. You ask me what I do? I'm really a teacher. I teach the client about what coverages are in their product and whether they may have an exposure, they may have a gap. Some of the Lloyd's contracts are kind of lacking, and the admitted markets have broader definitions of coverage, scopes of service, things like that. So when we go through that process, at the end, the client can make an informed decision about what they're buying, and I do everything in full transparency. So they see I disclose my commission, so they don't wonder why I'm recommending this or the other, although by the end, they've kind of made the decision already. If we've got a declination, I actually show the client, hey, this carrier declined. So it's not, well, did they really? Here's the email. They declined it for this reason. So at the end, the client has a complete understanding of what they've done. And one of the beautiful things about architects, professional liability policies, architects in particular, we can do a 2-year policy. So we do it once, we don't have to do it next year. And they go through that process knowing, having the assurance, we did it right the first time. So it's very satisfying. It's a pretty, I think it's a pretty satisfying insurance purchasing, experience for the client. And I've had some success with it.
Yeah.
So for all of those things, that particular focus has worked really, really well for me.
Yeah. So how often? So I'm experiencing this now, right? Where I'm getting into accounts based off of flood, and the folks that are sourcing the accounts for me are saying, well, can you do anything else? Can you do earthquake?
Mm-hmm.
Can you do wildfire? And I just think it's just a matter of time before someone says, can you just do the whole thing? How often does the professional liability become a lead generator for the traditional lines? And I think you know where I'm going with this, because I think for a young professional that wants to sell personal lines, it's like, don't sell personal lines, sell the other stuff, and then use that as a lead to get into personal lines.
Absolutely, and that happens all day long. Once they've experienced the professional liability purchasing process and they've come away with that informed decision, one of the things that I do is I sell by exposure. I don't sell very technical, analytical. I'm not the guy that's going to cry on you to get you to buy something. So if you want life insurance, I'm not going to paint that picture of you're dead and now your family's impoverished. You're going to come to me and I'm going to help you find the right policy, but it's going to be a numbers driven thing. One of the things I do though is I focus on exclusions. So where everybody else focuses on coverage, I tend to read policies from the exclusionary standpoint and solve those problems. So, everything today is cyber and employment practices. So those are just two, avenues that I'm constantly touching on with clients, giving them that education. I don't care if you buy it or not, but shame on me if I don't at least share that education with you.
Sure.
But then the cross-selling opportunities, putting those two aside, every architectural practice needs workers' comp if they've got employees. They're sitting in an office somewhere and they've got furniture and computers, and so we're doing BOPs or small commercial packages, and that's just an instant segue into those things. The thing that differentiates me and in particular Marquee versus a lot of our other competitors who are very, very narrowly niche focused on just the professional is that we've got the depth to solve all of those problems. I've got 30 years of experience in general business. So yeah, I mean, I can do a BOP with my eyes closed. Like it's as easy as cake. But if we've got, larger construction projects that these guys are involved in, I've got a guy, I love that. I've got a guy that in our company that can do anything. So that's a real advantage for us, is that those opportunities are there, and we have the technical expertise, to help the clients. We literally, one of our taglines is there are no limits to what we can do. But by leading with that one thing and being that expert in that one thing opens up all those doors. Because once you've established all of that credibility, they don't even want to talk to Geico. I got a guy. Michael's my guy. Nick's my guy.
Yeah.
I don't forget it. Go do it.
You just said the key word. You said credibility. And for those that are starting from the personal line side, it's a much harder conversation to say, I just sold your auto and homeowners, and hey, can you give me a shot at your BOP or your professional liability? For the customer's mind, it doesn't register. It's like, you're my car and my home guy. What the hell do you know about my business? Whereas you're coming in, you're just like, I am an expert at your business and what you're exposed to from a liability standpoint. And because that's technically complex, they're just like, well, the BOP would be easy for Michael. The homeowners would be easy for Michael. The auto, the workers' comp would be simple compared to that. It's a much easier conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, credibility. You understand their pain. I understand like you said, I understand the exposures of your industry, of your business. We've solved them. Part of the other exposures in your business are cyber, property, all of these things. But I'm not leading with an expertise necessarily in one policy. I'm leading with expertise in an industry that is focused on that one policy. That's my intro, though.
Yeah. I could probably hear people listening to this just saying, well, architects is just such a small market. I don't think people realize these niche markets, they're gigantic. Like, the homeowners market's like $90 billion, but these specialty markets are billions. And if you get a small percentage of it, your company's doing great, you're doing great, everyone's doing great. Like architects seem small, but it's actually not only architects, but the legal, professional liability, medical malpractice. Like, these are gigantic industries.
Yeah. So what this has done for me. So I mentioned to you, I've actually got kind of two niches. So I've got the one. So because I like professional liability coverage, and through a collaboration with a mentor of mine, I don't know that they'll see this, but Charles and Nicola, Brian Linster, if by chance you happen to see this, hey buds, props to you guys. They're lead attorneys in the franchise space. Yeah, got to give a shout out for my boys. They're lead attorneys in the franchise space. And Brian in particular saw something in me that I didn't know existed. And he said, you need to focus on one thing. You should focus on franchise. I said, well, I don't know the first thing about the franchise industry. This was also about a year and a half ago. So I said, well, all right, let's start looking into it. He had referred me of a couple of his clients. I did lease reviews and things like that. He saw the level of detail I put into it. He said, you're perfect for this. You're the guy. You need to do this. We're going to get you make the right introductions and connections. So I started looking at franchise. And I mean, there's nothing more general business when it comes to the insurance market about a franchise business. Every franchise business needs a BOP, needs work comp, needs employment practices, needs cyber, needs all of these things. They also need HR. They need payroll. And as I was going through this evolution of learning about the industry, not the businesses, but the industry, one of the things I realized is that franchisors have a professional liability exposure. And that just like eureka. So we lead with the franchisor professional. I mean, once you know a PL policy, they kind of flow. I also do lawyers and consultants and things like that. But the franchise space is so intriguing to me. So what we're doing now is we're actually building a program where it's anchored by the franchise professional, but we're now providing work, the general business insurance, the HR services, the payroll, the benefits that the new franchise unit owners need when they get started. And the concept behind it is franchise is a very grow your business mantra space. You go to a franchise, so we're going to grow your brand. We're going to grow. It's very growth oriented.
Yeah.
And growth is kind of hard for guys like us because our product's on the expense side of the ledger sheet. Like that's not a happy place to be in a growth area. And as I started processing this, I said, well, what do these new entrepreneurs need? They need help. They need guidance. They need to hit the ground running. One of the things that the franchisor does is provide logistical support. If I can provide that logistical support in those product lines, I can help the franchise unit owner get open quicker, be more profitable, and start returning revenue to the franchisor. Bingo, I'm growing your brand. And when I tell that story to the franchisors, it resonates. And they want those resources because they know that their franchise unit owners are like their babies. They're like their kids. We need to help them grow. So that's been a really powerful message. We're still developing the program and all of the logistics to it, but it's going to require collaboration with one or two of our other offices, and that's the beauty of the Acrisure model. Is I've got offices all across the country, who have expertise. We can do work comp programs for exercise chains, as an example. We're doing a cyber thing for you. It's crazy. And it all came, all of this came out of really just looking at one individual, market. And in this case, franchise. And you could do it. There was a producer out there that just wanted to do one thing in the franchise space. If he just wanted to sell work comp coverage to exercise chains, I mean, the world is filthy with exercise franchises.
That's like knowledge is power, right? And your message is resonating with me because it's these things kind of build on itself. So for those that are listening, I think it's just critical for them to realize that small is actually good. A small niche, the smaller the better. And then with knowledge comes power. You will be able to grow that. You will be able to connect dots to other areas. You're able to take your expertise in professional liability and now sort of leap, use it as a springboard and leap over a pond into another area, and still use that as a flag that you can plant and say, let's expand this out. And I just keep thinking as you're talking, it's like knowledge is power. It's like if you just can develop a small expertise, you will be able to attach it and apply it in areas that others haven't done it, and it's going to create unique opportunities for you to walk indoors and for you to create unique solutions.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I wanted to talk about technology because how much has that affected professional liability, for one thing? I remember underwriting or brokering professional liability, so I'm curious as to how much that's changed over time. But how have you seen technology affecting your day-to-day business?
Well, obviously, we're very reliant on it. I mean, here we are conducting an interview that is going to go on YouTube, and I'm on a cell phone. Yeah. So, obviously, it's pretty. We use it every day, and it evolves every day.
Are you seeing it on the underwriting side with professional liability? Are you seeing the ability or the infusion of technology in the rate making process, in how underwriting firms are absorbing submissions, delivering quotes to you? Are you seeing technology infused in the legacy aspect of your day-to-day?
We're obviously the smaller carriers who are behind the scale on that. I notice them more often. The larger carriers that we're working with are very tech-oriented. Obviously, they've been doing this a long time. I couldn't tell you about the rate-making process and what goes on behind the scenes because I'm not on the company side, and I don't. My interaction is really with the client and then, with the underwriter. So I don't. I really couldn't share that with you.
Sure.
I can give you the history from 30 years ago when we were, sending in, paper applications and waiting 3 days. The fax machine back then was a godsend. I mean, now I can literally send a fillable PDF app to a client, have him do it with me on the phone. He blasts it back to me. I forward the email over to my underwriter. We get on a quick call, touch on a couple things, and I can have a quote returned in 3 or 4 hours. If I can get everybody aligned, get the bind order, all he's got to do is press a button. And what started at 9 o'clock in the morning is just a quick phone call to a renewal client. I can have a policy in hand by 4. So obviously that's technology driven, and the carriers who are doing that are more nimble and able to provide that service. Some of the other legacy carriers, they're still not there. I don't know so much on the PL side. One of our property carriers who does interesting things for us. I don't want to say their name, but one of my clients asked me, do they have a website where I can log in and check my account? So I didn't even think that. I went online and I saw she could pay a bill, but that was it. So I was almost embarrassed to send the email back. I was like, Dolores, I'm sorry, they don't have that. That they're not really tech savvy just quite yet, but you can pay your bill. And I'm waiting for the email to come back to. What do you mean?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
So
it's the common complaint. That we deal with at Insurance Nerds, on our Slack channel, on our social media sites when we talk. It's, for a lot of the industry, not much has changed. Getting them to, go beyond the fax and go beyond the email and go into something that's more API web service oriented has been a big deal. So, I want to respect your time. I want to transition over to the portion of the podcast where we get a little bit more personal. Who is Michael Porpora?
okay.
So I ask all my guests. I didn't send this in the agenda, but I'm just curious. Yeah. I have a feeling you might come up with a unique answer. I don't know. Who knows? When you retire, what are you going to do?
Great question. And the answer is, I don't know. When I made the leap to sell my business and merge it in and partner with Acrisure, one of the conversations with my wife, we were 49 at the time, was, all right, if everything goes sideways and this doesn't work out, we'll sell the stock and I'll retire at 55. And that was kind of like the default backup. That's our parachute, and that'll be the end of it. And here I am 3 years later, and retirement isn't even I can't even fathom it. If I were to get out of the business, what I think I'd wind up doing is teaching and consulting. But I think as a producer, I'm one of those rare unicorns in that I'm an agency principal, I'm an agency owner, but I have absolutely no administrative responsibilities. And I didn't understand the value of that early in my career. I always thought being the guy in the office, being the principal in the office, that was a big deal. And I never knew what a producer actually was. And when that kind of hit me, shout out to my friend Pete Lynch who brought that to my attention. We're the guys that make it happen. I joke, I want to ride on the corporate jet, and I'm more likely to have that happen because I'm $1 million producer rather than I'm running an agency and supervising all these people. I'm the guy that's bringing revenue to the table.
Yeah.
So as a producer, once you're good at it, I think, and you've got a niche and you've got a really good support staff, I think you can kind of do it on a part-time or a very laser-focused basis. And, we don't have to come to the office. We have technology. We can do things like that. So maybe, just maybe a more relaxed workflow. How much golf can you play? I think my wife is actually terrified at the fact that I be home all the time. She likes the fact that I go to the office and I don't spend, a whole lot of time at home. We got that nice balance.
I think I could figure out how to play golf all day, every day. I think I could figure that out. But I respect seeing your last name. I asked you if you were Italian, and you are Italian. I just had a sense that you were probably like my dad, hard worker, and that retirement is just like you you need to be active. I kind of sense that with you. So good. That's good for your wife. We'll just happy wife, happy life. So good for you.
One thing we would like to do is travel a little more. Like I want to enjoy. We've worked so hard, so there are things that we're going to start doing now. But yeah, I'm going to be busy, for a while. I'm not looking to hang up my cleats.
Good. What tools or techniques do you find useful to be productive and or organized?
I love checklists. I love Excel. I will create a spreadsheet for everything. I've got my pizza recipe on a spreadsheet. My pizza dough recipe I like to cook. Yeah, so I've got that on. I mean, I use a spreadsheet for I'm very analytical. You got to see me try and buy a car. I mean, it drives my wife crazy. She's just going to buy the damn thing, and I need to analyze. And so, Excel is very important to me. There's not a day that I don't use Excel. Outlook and my calendar reminders, things like that are very important. I've also got a whiteboard behind me that I like. It just I come to the office and I write the day of the week, and and it just grounds me a little bit. And a quote, I read a quote every day and I write that down. Something that's either motivating
I like that a lot.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah. So here, I'll share that with you.
Oh,
Can
cool. Yeah, that's the whole purpose of the webcam. I love that. What's that say? If you cannot do great things, do small things.
Yeah. If you cannot do great things, do small things in a great way.
I love that.
Napoleon. Yeah, my handwriting is atrocious.
No.
Another thing I use is obviously, the keyboard, because I can't print to save my life.
Yeah, that's like me. It's like chicken scratch,
Yeah.
That's great. I love that. Final question is that I ask all my guests are, what books have you found to be valuable in your business and or personal lives? So fiction, nonfiction.
Great question. Great question. And I've recently started to become a very active reader. So two books, and I'll show one of them.
Yep, I wrote that down. I got that.
Changed my life.
I think I actually have that on my wish list from like a year ago and never ended up purchasing it. So you might have convinced me to just break down and buy it.
Changed my business life. The book that I actually listened to most recently, I didn't read it, I listened to it in the car, was Jordan Peterson, The 12 Rules for Life, an Antidote for Chaos. Funny thing here, take another look. So you can't read them, but I wrote the rules down.
Yeah.
And I'll probably wind up erasing them at some point, but they're a nice little reference. It just really resonated with me. A lot of interesting things that were in the book that validated, and I just found it. I found it really inspirational and kind of made me feel comfortable in my own skin. Every now and then you need that reality check, and a lot of the things that were in that book I thought were really, really interesting. So I'd recommend reading it or listening to it. Some of the wording is kind of heady, so I don't know that I could have read it. It might have, squirreled and distracted me. He's pretty deep. Jordan Peterson's got there's some heavy thinking in that, but it was a great book to listen to. So those two.
You weren't the first. You haven't been the first one to recommend that one. That's been on the list of a couple other guests as well. So we'll have to pay attention to that. This has been wonderful. I love your enthusiasm. I love what you're doing. We really, I think we tackled niche in a way that, really, I hope the audience that for those, it doesn't even have to be production. It's just been, I think it's just a good career decision is to focus on a niche and become an expert at something, then expand from there. And I think you really nailed why that's so important on the insurance side. So I want to thank you for coming on. How can people reach you?
So you can reach me at right now at RPM Insurance Agency in Staten Island. My phone is getting low. The telephone number here is 718-761-8900, or my email address is M Porpora, P for Peter, O-R, P for Peter, O-R-A, at rpminsurance.com.
Okay, we'll have all of that on the show notes. And I appreciate you taking time out of your schedule to discuss. And I look forward to following your success on the franchise side. Come back
Thanks.
on.
I really
Come back on
appreciate
and
it.
update us.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I've got to be more involved. You guys are doing great things, and I need to pay more attention to you guys because you're really out there, providing really, really great service. And I'm very grateful for the opportunity to speak with you today. And thank you so much for considering me and giving me this opportunity.
Okay.
This has been really special, and I've enjoyed it.
Awesome. My guest this week has been Michael Porpora. Until next time, thank you, everyone, and have a great week.